The Los Diablos Cartel thought they owned the Sonoran borderlands. Their criminal empire had carved deep roots through Arizona's fertile valleys, through violence and corruption, leaving a trail of abandoned farms and shattered families. But when they set their sights on Elena Ramirez's modest citrus grove, they made a mistake that would shake their organization to its core. They threatened a woman whose dogs had been trained to take down the world's most dangerous targets. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's story will leave you absolutely speechless. The October heat shimmered across Valencia. Grove as Elena Ramirez completed her morning inspection of the irrigation lines. To any observer, she appeared to be nothing more than another struggling single mother trying to keep her small farm afloat, her worn work boots leaving prints in the dusty soil between rows of citrus trees. But there was nothing ordinary about the way her 3 Belgian Malinois moved through the grove with military precision, their synchronized patterns invisible to untrained eyes, but speaking volumes to anyone who understood tactical K9 operations. She spotted the black SUV first, a heavily tinted Escalade, making its 3rd pass of the week along the county road that bordered her property. The dogs, Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom, immediately shifted formation without any visible command, their bodies tense but controlled. Elena noted the vehicle's irregular speed, the way it slowed at specific points along her fence line. Amateur. Surveillance, she thought. The real threats would come later. The morning sun caught the silver charm on Shadow's collar, a seemingly decorative piece that actually contained a GPS tracker, evidence of the sophisticated equipment hidden beneath. The farm's rustic exterior. Even now, 3 years after their last official mission, Elena maintained the rigorous training schedule that had made her K9 unit legendary in covert operations. Every morning, dawn or dusk, she ran drills with the dogs, keeping their skills sharp. Old habits died hard, and in times like these, those habits might mean the difference between keeping her home and losing everything. Inside the farmhouse, Maria, Elena's 12-year-old daughter, sat at the kitchen counter doing homework, her tablet screen reflecting off her glasses. Her expression tightened as Elena entered, bringing with her the crisp morning air and the quiet confidence that had first caught the CIA's attention during her military service 15 years ago. "They're getting bolder," Maria said, gesturing toward her tablet. "The Hernandez family sold their farm yesterday, way below market value." Elena poured coffee into her favorite mug, the one with the faded Naval Intelligence logo, her movements measured and precise, just like every operation. She'd ever run. The mug was a reminder of simpler times, when her biggest challenges came from official missions, not cartel enforcers masquerading as legitimate businessmen. "4th cartel vehicle to pass by this morning," she reported, settling into the chair beside her daughter. "They're establishing patterns, testing responses, just like targets studying their prey." Shadow and Ghost flanked the kitchen entrance, while Phantom patrolled the perimeter, their routines so ingrained they needed no commands. Maria's young face showed the strain of recent weeks. The Los Diablos Cartel had been systematically acquiring or forcing the sale of every farm along the border valley. Their property was one of the last holdouts. "We could sell," Maria suggested, though her tone made clear she already knew her mother's answer. "Their offers still on the table. We could start fresh somewhere else, somewhere safer." The girl was too young to remember their life before the farm, but old enough now to understand danger when she saw it. "This isn't about money." Elena's voice carried the same steady calm that had made her legendary in covert operations. "The valley is strategic. These cartels aren't just pushing people out for the land itself. There's something else happening. Here." She walked to the window, checking sightlines and distances automatically, a habit ingrained from years of running K9 tactical operations. Have you noticed they're only targeting properties along the old mining trails? Her suspicions had been growing ever since she'd noticed the pattern in their acquisitions. The Los Diablos Cartel was systematically taking control of every property with direct access to the old mining trails, the ones that wound through the mountains, far from border patrol checkpoints and surveillance systems. As a handler, Elena had learned to spot patterns in everything. It was what had made her unit unbeatable in the field, and now those same skills were telling her something bigger was happening in the valley. The distant sound of engines interrupted their conversation, not passing by this time, but turning onto their gravel drive. Elena moved to the window, her stance relaxed, but her mind calculating positions and angles just as she had during countless operations. 3 black SUVs approached in formation, led by a custom Range Rover she recognized from news reports. Miguel Cortez, regional commander of the Los Diablos Cartel, former Mexican Special Forces, suspected of running their cross-border operations, though nothing had ever been proven. "Stay inside," Elena told Maria, her voice carrying the same quiet authority that had commanded covert operations across 3 continents. "Whatever happens, whatever you hear, stay in the house." She checked her position relative to the morning. Son, another habit from her operational days. Never let the light work against you. Always control the angles. She stepped onto the porch as the vehicles came to a stop, gravel crunching beneath their wheels. The dogs moved with her, taking positions that seemed casual to untrained eyes, but created perfect triangulated coverage of the approaching threat. Cortez killed his engine, but remained in his vehicle, removing designer sunglasses with theatrical slowness. His 2 companions, younger men with the hard eyes and tactical movements that marked them as cartel enforcers, dismounted to flank their leader. They moved with military precision, not common criminals, but trained operators. That confirmed Elena's suspicions about what was really happening in the valley. This moment, this seemingly routine confrontation on an Arizona farm, was about to trigger events that would expose a criminal empire. But right now, Elena Ramirez appeared to be exactly what the cartel expected. Just another single mother they could intimidate into selling. That was her advantage. Let them underestimate her. Let them see what they wanted to see, because sometimes justice comes from unexpected places. Sometimes it takes a pack of CIA-trained K9s to bring down targets others can't even see. And the Los Diablos Cartel was about to learn why Elena Ramirez's dogs hadn't lost a single target in 8 years of covert operations, whether it was in the mountains of Afghanistan or in defense of their home. The morning sun caught Shadow's teeth as the dog's lips curled ever so slightly, a gesture invisible to untrained eyes, but carrying volumes of meaning to those who understood what elite K9 units were capable of. The real hunt was about to begin. The air grew thick with tension as Miguel Cortez finally emerged from his Range Rover, his expensive boots crunching on gravel with deliberate slowness. His movements carried the fluid confidence of someone accustomed to being feared, someone who had broken countless others through intimidation alone. But he had never faced anyone quite like Elena Ramirez and her seemingly ordinary farm dogs. Miguel Cortez dismounted his custom Range Rover with practiced grace, his movements carrying the fluid confidence of someone accustomed to being feared. The morning sun caught his platinum watch as he adjusted his tailored suit jacket, making the diamonds gleam against the dark fabric. Elena Ramirez watched his approach from the porch, keeping her stance deliberately uncertain, her hands clasped in front of her as if nervous. Let them see what they expected to see, just like she'd learned in her CIA days. The 3 Belgian Malinois held their positions with perfect discipline, appearing to casual observers as nothing more than well-trained farm dogs. Shadow lay seemingly relaxed by Elena's feet, while Ghost and Phantom sat alert but non-threatening on either side of the porch steps. Only someone with extensive K9 tactical training would recognize their precise positioning for what it was. A perfect triangulation pattern designed to control and contain multiple hostile targets. "Mrs. Ramirez!" Cortez called out, his voice carrying false warmth. "Beautiful morning for a drive, isn't it?" His enforcers flanked him, their stance military precise. Elena noted their positioning automatically, just like setting up K9 containment. Zones during operations. 15 yards to the left enforcer, 12 to the right, both angled for optimal coverage. These weren't ordinary cartel thugs. Their training showed in every movement. "This is private property, Mr. Cortez," Elena replied, letting a tremor enter her voice. Inside, her mind was as steady as it had been during the Kandahar operation, when her dogs had tracked and contained 3 high-value targets across 12 miles of mountainous terrain. The memory flashed through her mind, the way the targets had frozen in fear when they realized they were surrounded. The perfect execution of each command, the flawless coordination between handler and K9s. Private property. That's exactly what I wanted to discuss. Cortez moved closer, his boots crunching on gravel. "My organization has plans for the valley, development plans that could benefit everyone." He gestured expansively at the citrus grove, including the modest farmhouse in his sweep. "Including you and your daughter." Elena watched his enforcers spread out, trying to get angle advantage. Amateur move. They were telegraphing their intentions to anyone trained to see it, but few people would notice. Few people had spent 15 years reading body language and anticipating movement, first in military operations, then in CIA K9 tactical units. The morning sun caught her wedding ring as she twisted it nervously, another calculated gesture. Most people didn't know that the same hands that appeared to tremble now had once guided K9 units through some of the most sensitive operations in recent history. "We're not interested in selling," Elena said softly, playing her role. "This farm has been in my husband's family for generations." She let her eyes dart nervously between the enforcers, as if intimidated by their presence. In reality, she was marking their positions, noting their stances, reading their level of training, just as she'd once read hostile targets during operations. Cortez's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Things change, Mrs. Ramirez. Progress comes whether we want it or not." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "Smart folks adapt. Others..." He shrugged meaningfully. "They tend to get left behind, sometimes tragically." Elena allowed herself to take a step back, feeding their assumptions. Behind her carefully crafted mask of fear, memories flickered through her mind. The weight of her first tactical command unit at 24, the years spent training with elite K9 teams, the classified operations that had earned her unit the nickname Ghost Pack among intelligence circles. But that had been another life before she'd met Carlos, before they'd fallen in love with Valencia Grove and the quiet life it offered. She'd packed away her tactical gear, settled into farming, let her legend fade into memory. Now, watching Cortez's enforcers position themselves, she was grateful for every hour of training, every operation, every lesson learned about reading threats and anticipating movement. The dogs remained perfectly still, their stillness itself a testament to their exceptional training. Most dogs would have reacted to the tension, shifted position, or shown signs of aggression. But these were not most dogs. I'll need to discuss this with my daughter," she managed, wrapping her arms around herself in a picture of intimidated vulnerability. Let them think they were dealing with a simple single mother. Let them underestimate her. It's what she'd been training them to do for weeks. Cortez reached into his jacket, making one of his enforcers tense nervously. Interesting, Elena noted. The man wasn't used to real violence, just intimidation. Cortez produced a business card, holding it out. Elena stepped forward to take it, letting them see her slight tremor. Inside, she was counting weapons, analyzing stances, noting how the younger enforcer carried himself. Everything told her these weren't just cartel soldiers. Their quasi-military bearing suggested connection to something bigger. 3 days, Mrs. Ramirez, Cortez said, mounting his range. Over, then we'll need an answer. The cartel vehicles roared away in a cloud of dust, leaving Elena on the porch. She waited until they were out of sight before her demeanor changed. The trembling stopped. Her posture shifted subtly, weight balanced perfectly. This was the stance that had made her unit unbeatable in covert operations, the perfect foundation for any tactical command. Maria emerged from the house, Elena's old tactical tablet in her hands. The device, disguised as a standard farm management system, had been tracking and recording every detail of the cartel's movements. "It's starting," Elena said softly. "They're getting ready to move on something big, something worth killing for." She turned to her daughter, letting her see the steel beneath her quiet smile. Inside the house, behind a false panel in the pantry, lay the specialized K9 tactical gear that had served them through countless classified operations. Next to it sat the logbook where she'd been recording cartel movements, documenting patterns, building a case. Because Elena Ramirez hadn't spent the last 3 years just playing farmer. She'd been watching, waiting, keeping her dog's skills sharp. Some people thought elite units were made during operations, but Elena knew better. They were made in the quiet moments, in the patient preparation, in the perfect stillness before taking action. The Los Diablos Cartel thought they were hunting easy prey. They were about to learn how it felt to become the target. Through the kitchen window, Elena watched Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom resume their patrol patterns, their movements so subtle that even experienced observers would miss their tactical significance. Each dog's collar contained sophisticated tracking and communication equipment, allowing them to operate as a coordinated unit, even without visible commands. The technology, like everything else about their true capabilities, was hidden beneath an ordinary exterior. Maria studied the tablet's display, her young face serious. Despite her age, she understood more than most about their situation. Being the daughter of a CIA K9 handler had taught her to see beyond surfaces, to recognize the patterns others missed. "They're using the same routes every time," she observed, highlighting the cartel vehicle's movement patterns. Always approaching from the south, always passing specific points at regular intervals. Elena nodded, pride mixing with concern. Her daughter had inherited her analytical mind, but this wasn't the life she'd wanted for her. After Carlos's death, in the line of duty, they were supposed to find peace here, build a normal life away from the world of covert operations and constant danger. But sometimes the world had other plans. The dogs suddenly shifted formation, their attention focusing on the distant sound of vehicles, more cartel surveillance right on schedule. Elena checked the time, noting their precision. They were professionals, she'd give them that, but professionals could be predicted, and predictability could be turned against them. The real question was what made this valley so important that they'd risk exposing their operation just to control it. The answer, she suspected, lay in those old mining trails and in the increasing frequency of late-night activity she'd observed along them. Something was coming, something big enough to make the cartel abandon their usual subtle approach. And when it did, Elena Ramirez and her extraordinary dogs would be ready. The hunt was about to begin. Valencia Grove hadn't changed much in the 3 years since Elena Ramirez had chosen it as her refuge. The small farming community still centered around the same family-owned businesses, though now most displayed Se Vende signs in their windows, silent testimony to the Los Diablos Cartel's growing influence. Elena parked her weathered pickup outside Martinez General Store, noting 3 black SUVs clustered near the entrance. Her hand brushed unconsciously against the concealed tactical radio in her belt, where years ago she'd carried a command unit. During countless operations, Shadow sat in the truck bed, appearing to casual observers as nothing more than a guard dog, while Ghost and Phantom maintained their patrol of the property's perimeter. Their movements, invisible to untrained eyes, followed complex tactical patterns designed to maintain maximum coverage with minimum visibility. Inside Martinez's, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Rosa Martinez, who had run the store since her father's passing 5 years ago, stood behind the counter, her face pale but determined as 2 cartel enforcers flanked her, while a third, wearing tactical gear beneath his leather jacket, leaned forward menacingly. "Protection fees ain't optional anymore, Rosa," he growled, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet store. "Valley's changing. Be a shame if something happened to this nice place your papa built." Elena selected a shopping basket, moving quietly through the aisles. Her presence registered. She saw the nearest enforcer's hand twitch slightly toward his concealed weapon. Military trained, that reflexive gesture confirmed. More evidence that something bigger was happening with the cartel than simple territorial expansion. "I've already paid the business association." Rosa's voice wavered, but held firm. Elena had always liked Rosa. They'd bonded years ago over shared stories. Rosa about inheriting her father's store, Elena carefully editing tales from her operational days. Now, watching her friend stand her ground, Elena was reminded of the steel that ran through this community. Business association don't matter anymore. The tactical enforcer swept a display of local honey onto the floor. "We're in charge now. 5,000 a month, starting today." Elena rounded the aisle, her basket filled with normal farm supplies. She kept her movements deliberate, unthreatening, the same way she'd once approached hostile situations before deploying her K9 unit. "Oh my," she said mildly, stepping over broken glass and honey. "What a mess. Rosa, do you have a mop? I'd be happy to help clean up." The cartel enforcers turned, irritation crossing their faces. The tactical leader started to speak, but Elena was already moving past them to the counter, pulling out her wallet. "Adding these to my monthly account," she said cheerfully, "and I'll need a case of that new coffee you got in, the whole bean dark roast." "Maria says it's amazing." Rosa blinked, then caught on. "Of course, Elena. I'll get that from the back." Elena smiled pleasantly at the enforcers. "I'm sure these gentlemen were just leaving, weren't they, boys?" The tactical leader stepped closer, trying to use his bulk to intimidate. "This ain't your business, lady." "No." Elena's smile remained pleasant, but her eyes changed subtly. Later, the enforcer would try to explain to his companions what he saw in those eyes. Something cold, something that triggered instincts he'd learned in combat. "My family's been buying from Martinez's for 3 generations. Rosa's father gave my husband his first job, so maybe it is my business." She turned back to her shopping list, dismissing them. The insult was deliberate, calculated. The tactical leader's face reddened, his hand twitching again toward his concealed weapon. "You should be careful, Mrs. Ramirez," he growled. "Accidents happen out here in farm country." Elena didn't look up from her list. "Yes, they do, like 2 weeks ago when your smuggling operation had that nasty spill out on the mining trail." Now she met his eyes. "Funny thing about accidents, you never know who might have seen something." The enforcers exchanged glances. That incident hadn't been reported because it happened during a late-night run, the kind that involved unmarked trucks and quiet exchanges. No one was supposed to know about it. "We'll finish this later." the tactical leader told Rosa, trying to salvage some authority, but his voice had lost its edge. After they left, Rosa sagged against the counter. "Thank you, Elena, but you shouldn't have. They're dangerous." "Yes, they are," Elena began, cleaning up the honey, her movements economical and precise, "and they're getting more organized. That's what worries me." She worked in silence for a moment, letting Rosa process the implications. The store owner was smart. She'd see the pattern. "Sheriff Reyes says they're just passing through," Rosa offered weakly, "part of some big development deal." "Is that what he says?" Elena's voice was carefully neutral. "Interesting, because that's not what his deputy told the Williams family when they tried to pressure them into selling last month." She finished mopping, her mind working through the pieces of the puzzle. "Have you noticed they're only buying properties along the old mining trails?" Rosa's eyes widened with realization. "But those trails are practically abandoned. They haven't been used since the mines closed." "Haven't been patrolled," Elena corrected gently. "No cellular coverage in some spots. Perfect for moving things that need to stay off the main roads." Rosa's face paled as she understood the implication. "You think they're using our valley for—" "I think," Elena interrupted softly, "that you should visit your sister in Phoenix, just for a few weeks." Her voice carried absolute authority, the same tone that had once commanded covert operations across 3 continents. "Please, things are about to change in the valley. When they do, it's better if certain people aren't around to see it." Outside, Elena loaded her supplies into the truck. Her phone buzzed, a text from Maria. "Sheriff Reyes stopped by after you left, asking questions about our plans for the farm." Elena smiled slightly. The pieces were moving exactly as she'd predicted. The cartel was getting nervous, pushing harder, which meant they had a deadline. Something big was coming. She drove to the outskirts of town, pulling onto a dusty turnout. From here, she could see the mining trails stretching toward the mountains. 3 years ago, she'd commanded her last official operation in Kabul. The mission's success had helped fund their new life, start fresh. Now, those same skills might be the only thing standing between her community and the criminals threatening to destroy it. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The text was brief. "They're watching, getting nervous, like old times. J." Elena deleted the message. Jack Torres, her old CIA handler, was still monitoring things. Good. She'd need backup when the time came. In her rearview mirror, she caught glimpses of a black SUV following at a discreet distance. Amateur surveillance. They were watching her while she watched them. Perfect. Everything was falling into place. The handler was about to come out of retirement, and the Los Diablos Cartel was about to learn why intelligence agencies still spoke of her K9 unit in whispered awe. But first, she had to give them exactly what they wanted. One seemingly vulnerable single mother ready to be used as leverage against her community. The perfect target, the perfect trap. Elena smiled as she drove. Some predators, after all, hunt. Best from inside the den. Shadow's ears perked up in the truck bed, catching sounds too faint for human ears. The dog's enhanced training allowed him to detect and classify threats at distances that would seem impossible to most observers. 3 years of peaceful farming hadn't dulled their edge. It had only made them more patient. "The shipments always come through on the new moon," Eleanor explained to Maria, who watched from the cellar steps. Her fingers traced a route along the mining trails. 3 trucks usually, spaced 20 minutes apart. They've been using legitimate shipping companies as cover, just like in Juarez. Maria studied the photos, her expression troubled. "These aren't just local criminals, are they? This is something bigger, much bigger." Eleanor opened a laptop displaying satellite imagery Jack had provided. "Look at the heat signatures from the Copper Canyon mine last week. Those aren't normal mining. Operations. They're using the old tunnels for storage, probably modified them for vehicle access. Perfect setup for a sophisticated weapons trafficking operation. She pulled up another image, this one showing vehicles moving along the mining trail at night. See, these trucks? Military surplus retrofitted with specialized suspension systems. Same kind we saw in Juarez before. She paused, the memory still sharp after all these years. Before what happened at the border? Maria asked softly. Elena nodded, checking Shadow's tactical gear. The specialized equipment felt familiar in her hands, like greeting an old friend. I was running surveillance with the dogs early that morning, saw something I wasn't supposed to see. Similar trucks, similar operation. When I started asking questions, suddenly there was pressure to retire. Subtle at first, then not so subtle. She moved to a shelf filled with electronic equipment, surveillance cameras, motion sensors, and communication gear that would have looked more at home in a military operation than a farm. They thought I walked away because I was scared. Really, I was just changing positions. Sometimes you have to step back to get a better shot. The quiet hum of the laptop's fan filled the silence as Elena checked the feed from cameras she'd hidden around their property. The cartel had established 3 observation points, just as she'd predicted. Amateur work. They'd chosen obvious positions any experienced operator would recognize. Their enforcers are former military, she continued, marking positions on a tactical map. Special forces probably from the same unit, but they're sloppy, overconfident. They've forgotten that in real combat, like in operations, it's not always about who's strongest. It's about who sees the angle others miss. Her phone buzzed. Another update from Jack. Satellite confirms 3 more trucks arrived at the border. Crossing. They're moving tonight. Elena's expression hardened. Just like Juarez. They're using the new moon for cover, thinking darkness is their ally. Maria watched her mother work, seeing not the quiet farmer their neighbors knew, but the legendary handler who had once dominated covert operations across the Mexican border. What's the plan? Elena moved to a case in the corner, opening it to reveal specialized K9 tactical gear she'd been stockpiling. They'll come for me tonight. Cortez is too proud, too sure of himself. He'll want to use me as leverage, make an example to the other holdouts in the valley. She fitted Shadow with the advanced combat harness with practiced efficiency. When they do, they'll take me to the mine. It's their only facility large enough to handle tonight's shipment. She paused, checking Ghost's specialized sensory equipment. And then, Elena smiled, the expression reminiscent of her operational days when she knew victory was inevitable. I start marking targets, just like old times. She checked. The surveillance feeds one last time. The cartel observers remained in position, watching the farmhouse with night vision equipment. Let them watch. Let them think they had the advantage of darkness and superior numbers. I've placed cameras and motion sensors at key points along the mining trails, she explained, showing Maria the network she'd built. Jack's monitoring satellite feeds. The moment they move me, he alerts our trusted contacts, not the ones Cortez has bought off. Meanwhile, I'll be exactly where we need me to be, inside their operation. Maria touched the tactical harness on Phantom's back. Your old lucky charm. Luck had nothing to do with it. Elena checked her backup communication devices with the same attention to detail that had once earned her unit perfect mission ratings. Like in real life, you make your own luck. You prepare, you wait, you take. Action when everything aligns. An indicator light blinked on one of her monitors, movement at the ranch's perimeter. Elena checked the feed, noting the professional way the new arrivals moved. Not regular cartel members this time. These were the real operators, the ones who handled their serious work. They're here, she said softly, beginning the final phase of her preparation. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of engines. Cortez's people establishing a perimeter, just as she'd predicted. Remember the signal. If I don't check in every 4 hours, I contact Jack, who contacts his people, Maria finished. Just come back to me. Always. Elena's voice carried the same quiet confidence that had once commanded covert operations across 3 continents. Cortez thinks he's running a sophisticated operation. He's about to learn what real precision looks like. The handler wasn't just coming out of retirement. She was about to give the performance of her life, with stakes far higher than any mission rating. The Los Diablos Cartel was about to learn why Elena Ramirez's K9 unit had been called the most effective tactical team in border operations history. Night settled over Valencia Grove like a velvet shroud, bringing with it a silence that made Elena's trained senses heighten with anticipation. Through her surveillance feeds, she watched 5 cartel members taking positions in the tree line, their movement patterns confirming her earlier assessment. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They moved with military precision, using standard tactical approaches that spoke of professional training. Her phone buzzed silently. Jack's message was brief but telling. Facial recognition confirms 3 of Cortez's new operators are ex-Special Forces, same unit that disappeared after Juarez incident. Elena allowed herself a small smile in the darkness. The pieces were falling into place, the same unit that had provided security for the weapons shipment she'd witnessed before being forced into retirement. Now they were here, working with the cartel. Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom had taken their positions, each dog's enhanced training allowing them to remain perfectly still despite the growing tension. Their specialized gear, designed to be virtually invisible in darkness, contained sophisticated communication and tracking equipment that would prove invaluable in the coming operation. Through the farmhouse windows, Elena could see more vehicles arriving, representatives from various cartel operations, each bringing their own pieces to tonight's exchange. This wasn't just about weapons anymore. Something bigger was happening, something that had drawn multiple criminal organizations. To one remote mining site, the Foundation's shadow empire was crumbling, but its impact would continue echoing through intelligence agencies worldwide as decades of corruption faced the light of justice. And if new shadows tried to rise, if corruption attempted to rebuild, if darkness threatened to return, well, there was always a handler watching, always K9 units ready to pursue, always justice waiting to be served. The evening air crackled with tension as Elena Ramirez watched 5 cartel operators take their positions around Valencia Grove. Through her surveillance feeds, she counted each movement, each tactical shift, her mind processing their patterns with the same precision that had once made her K9 unit legendary in covert operations. Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom remained motionless, their enhanced training allowing them to maintain perfect stillness despite the growing threat. Elena's phone buzzed silently, a text from Maria bringing updates from the hidden command center she'd set up in the cellar. Movement at the north perimeter, 3 more vehicles. The pieces were moving exactly as predicted. Cortez wasn't just sending in forces, he was deploying his entire tactical team. They were taking no chances tonight. Through the farmhouse windows, she watched 2 black SUVs approach, not using their headlights. Professional operators moving under cover of darkness. Their formation spoke of military training, but their approach revealed gaps, small mistakes that told Elena these men hadn't worked together long. Mercenaries then, hired specifically for tonight's operation. Shadow's ears twitched slightly, picking up sounds far beyond human hearing range. The dog's enhanced training allowed him to process and categorize threats at distances that would seem impossible to most observers. Elena noted his reaction. More vehicles approaching from the east, trying to use the orchard for cover. They're being sloppy, she whispered to the dogs, her voice carrying that same quiet authority that had once guided them through the most sensitive operations. Using predictable approaches, standard containment patterns, they've forgotten the first rule of tactical operations. Never assume you know all the angles. Her tactical tablet displayed heat signatures moving through the grove. 12 operators, total, forming a classic surrounding pattern. They thought they were being clever, using the citrus trees for cover. But Elena had spent 3 years mapping every inch of this land, placing sensors in precisely calculated positions. There wasn't a shadow on her property that she couldn't monitor. The first flashbang crashed through the kitchen window exactly where Elena had predicted. The tactical team breached with professional efficiency. 2-man teams, coordinated movement, synchronized timing. In another life, she would have admired their technique. Now she let them find her in the kitchen, appearing appropriately terrified as the team leader, face hidden behind a tactical mask, zip-tied her hands with practiced ease. "Target secured," he reported into his radio. "No complications." They moved her quickly to the waiting SUV, their efficiency confirming everything she'd suspected about their level of training. Through her carefully crafted mask of fear, Elena noted every detail. 6-man team, latest generation tactical gear, military hand signals. This was no ordinary cartel operation. Miguel Cortez waited by the vehicles, watching with satisfaction. "Mrs. Ramirez, sorry about the dramatic entrance, but we needed to make a point." His designer suit looked out of place among the tactical gear, but his stance revealed his military background. "What do you want?" Elena let her voice tremble, even as her mind calculated distances and angles with operational precision. "Same thing as before, the farm, but now your daughter has extra motivation to sell." Cortez's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You'll be our guest until the paperwork is signed." The drive to Copper Canyon Mine took exactly 14 minutes. Elena counted every turn, noted every radio call. The tactical team maintained strict communications discipline, another sign they weren't typical cartel soldiers. Inside the mine, entrance, the setup confirmed her analysis: professional guard positions, modern surveillance equipment, secure communication center. This wasn't just a temporary holding site. This was an operations base. They secured her to a chair in the central office, giving her clear view of their activities. Overconfidence. They wanted her to see their strength, their professionalism, to feel helpless. Cortez pulled up a chair, radiating false concern. "Don't worry, this won't take long. Your daughter's already received our demands. Once she signs the transfer papers, you'll be free to go." Elena maintained her frightened demeanor while observing everything through the office windows. She could see teams unloading crates from a newly arrived truck, military shipping containers, serial numbers matching the pattern from Juarez. "Why?" she asked, letting tears fill her eyes. "Why our farm? There's nothing special about that land." "Actually, there is." Cortez leaned back, enjoying his moment of superiority. "The mining trails are about to become very important. Certain business opportunities are opening up. Your farm is the final piece we need." A commotion at the loading dock drew his attention. One of the tactical team members approached rapidly. "Sir, we've got a problem. The shipment manifests don't match. Someone's been tampering with the routing codes." Cortez's casual demeanor vanished. "Show me." Elena watched them examine documents at a nearby desk. The tactical team member pointed to something on a laptop screen. "These serial numbers, they're being tracked. Someone's monitoring the shipments." "Impossible." Cortez's voice carried real concern. "Those codes are classified military access only." "Not anymore." The team member lowered his voice, but Eleanor's trained hearing caught every word. "Boss, this matches what happened in Juarez. Remember when that CIA K9 unit almost exposed the whole operation?" Elena kept her expression fearful, but inside she smiled. They'd taken her exactly where she needed to be, at the heart of their operation. Her specialized collar, designed to look like ordinary pet equipment, vibrated once. Jack's acknowledgement, the tracking devices she'd attached to their vehicles during the kidnapping were transmitting. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Unknown to the cartel, Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom were already in position, their advanced tactical gear allowing them to move undetected through the mine's perimeter. Cortez returned, his earlier confidence replaced by barely concealed worry. Change of plans. We accelerate the timeline. Get the buyer on secure comms. The whole shipment moves tonight. Sir, one of his men objected, the border crossing isn't secured yet. Now. Cortez ran a hand through his hair. Something's wrong. This is too similar to Juarez. We need to finish this before... He stopped, staring at Elena with dawning suspicion. For just a moment, she let her mask slip, let him see what was really behind her tears. Cortez took an involuntary step back. Who are you? Elena smiled, and for the first time that night, it reached her eyes. The same smile that had unnerved cartel leaders for 15 years. You should have checked more. Carefully, she said softly. Should have looked deeper into who you were dealing with. Cortez's face went pale. The handler, you're the CIA handler from Juarez. Elena's response was calm, measured, like giving commands during a complex operation. Consider this a friendly warning. Release me now, leave the valley, and this ends. Here, continue with tonight's shipment. She shrugged against her restraints. Well, you know what happened in Juarez. Cortez's response was predictable. Secure her, double the guard. No one goes in or out without my direct approval. He leaned close to Elena. Handler or not, you're not stopping this shipment. Too much money involved, too many powerful people. I know, Elena replied calmly. That's exactly what I'm counting on. As they left her alone in the office, Elena began counting down in her head. 3 hours until Jack's team would be in position. 2 hours until the weapons buyers arrived. Just enough time for a handler to prepare for the performance of her lifetime. The Copper Canyon mine hummed with tense activity as Elena Ramirez observed from her secured position. Through the office windows, she watched Cortez's operation with professional interest. 3 shifts of guards rotating every 2 hours. Communication, center monitoring police bands. Tactical teams maintaining perimeter security, professional but not flawless. A younger guard approached, holding a water bottle. His patch identified him as a recruit, Miguel Sanchez, according to the name tape on his tactical vest. Former military based on his bearing, but his eyes showed uncertainty that Elena recognized from her operational days, the look of someone realizing they might be on the wrong side. Thank you, Miguel. Elena's use of his name made him start slightly. Marine Force Recon, right? Afghanistan. His expression confirmed her analysis. The way he moved, that distinct recon scanning pattern. Old habits die hard. I'm not supposed to talk to you, but... He lingered, curious despite himself. Of course not. Elena took a sip of water. The CIA handler is dangerous, even zip-tied to a chair. She noted his reaction. But you're already having doubts, aren't you? Wondering why simple land acquisition needs military-grade tactical teams. Why those crates have radiation shielding. Miguel glanced involuntarily at the loading dock, where teams were preparing the shipment. Elena noted the reaction. So the radiation shielding was accurate. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Those aren't just weapons, they're moving, she continued softly. You figured that out, haven't you? Regular guns don't need specialized handling protocols, don't need military security teams. Shut up. But his voice lacked conviction. Did Cortez tell you about Juarez? About what happened to the last team that helped move cargo like this? A door slammed open as Cortez entered, his face tight with controlled anger. Stop talking to the prisoner. He dismissed Miguel with a gesture, then turned to Elena. Trying to turn my men already? You haven't lost your touch? Just making conversation, Elena smiled pleasantly. Reminiscing about old times. Remember Carlos Torres from Juarez, the one who helped us expose the operation? He got full immunity. Cortez's facade cracked slightly. You're not getting out of this. Even if you are the handler, you're alone. No backup, no K9 unit. Am I? Elena shifted slightly, making him tense. Are you sure about that? Before he could respond, one of his communication specialists burst in. Boss, we've got movement. Multiple vehicles approaching from the north. Buyers are early. Cortez checked his watch. Not the buyers. The specialist's voice carried real concern. Different approach pattern, professional. They're maintaining radio silence. Elena watched Cortez's expression shift. Expecting someone else? She asked innocently. His phone buzzed. The color drained from his face as he read the message. How? This is impossible. Those are classified frequencies. Are they? Elena kept her voice casual. You should ask your weapons buyers about their operational security, particularly their communications protocols. Sloppy work using the same frequencies as Juarez. Cortez grabbed her chair, leaning close. What did you do? Me? I'm just a hostage. But her smile suggested otherwise. Although you might want to check your vehicles for tracking devices. Standard procedure during a kidnapping. Plant trackers during the initial encounter. Your tactical team was so focused on looking professional, they forgot basic counter-surveillance. New commotion erupted outside. One of the tactical team leaders rushed in. Sir, we've got a problem. Local police scanner just lit up. Multiple federal agencies coordinating with state police. They're establishing roadblocks on all approaches. To the mining trails. Shut it down, Cortez ordered. Scrub everything. Tell the buyers, too late. Elena's voice cut through his growing panic. Those roadblocks aren't random. They're boxing you in, using your own tactical approach against you. Standard handler strategy. Trap them in their own fortress. Cortez's phone buzzed again. The message made him curse. The buyers are backing out, say there's too much heat. Of course they are. Elena settled more comfortably in her chair. Professional weapons buyers don't like complications. One hint of federal attention, they disappear, taking their money with them. Through the windows, she could see the operation unraveling. Guards abandoning positions, tactical teams arguing about evacuation protocols, the professional facade cracking under pressure. You planned this, Cortez accused. The kidnapping, the tracking device, the buyers getting spooked. You wanted to be caught. Partly true, Elena met his gaze calmly. I needed to confirm the connection to Juarez, needed to identify the real players, the ones above you, Cortez, the ones who shut down my investigation 3 years ago. A new voice crackled over the mine's speakers, Jack Torres's distinctive tone. Attention, Los Diablos. This is a federal operation. We have you surrounded. All exits are covered. Surrender now. Elena watched the last of Cortez's confidence crumble. You know what happens next, don't you? Your buyers are gone, your tactical teams are ready to run, and everyone up the chain is already destroying evidence, erasing connections. You're bluffing, Cortez snarled, but his hand shook slightly. Still think I'm bluffing? Another explosion rocked the perimeter. Your buyers weren't just afraid of federal attention, they were afraid of me. Afraid of what the handler might have uncovered about their operation, about their connections to Juarez. Around them, the mine erupted in chaos as cartel members realized the trap they were in. Some wanted to fight, others were already looking for escape routes. The professional tactical team stood apart, communicating urgently on their secured channels. One last chance, Cortez. Elena's voice carried absolute certainty. Surrender now. Tell us everything about the buyers, about the classified shipments, about Juarez. Or, she shrugged, well, you remember what happened to the last organization that underestimated a CIA handler and her K9 unit. Cortez stared at her for a long moment, weighing options that were rapidly disappearing. Outside, federal vehicles could be seen taking position. The net was closing. The handler was hunting again, and this time she had them exactly where she wanted them. The Copper Canyon mine had become a pressure cooker, and Elena Ramirez was about to demonstrate why she'd been called the most effective K9 handler in border operations history. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one you think you have. Trapped. The mine's ventilation system carried the faintest whine, a sound too high for human ears, but a clear signal to 3 highly trained Belgian Malinois waiting in the darkness. The real operation was about to begin. The Copper Canyon mine had become a focal point of mounting tension as Elena Ramirez watched Cortez's organization fracture under pressure. The professional tactical teams had separated themselves from the regular cartel members, their military training evident as they established defensive positions. Their movements betrayed the kind of precision that came from extensive combat experience rather than simple criminal enterprise. "Sir," Miguel Sanchez approached Cortez nervously, his Marine Force recon training visible in his careful assessment of the deteriorating situation. "The radiation sensors are showing readings from those crates. What exactly are we moving here?" "Shut up and maintain your position," Cortez snapped, but Elena caught the fear beneath his anger. The operation was unraveling faster than he could control. "Tell him, Cortez," Elena suggested calmly from her chair. "Tell him about the specialized weapons components, the ones that need those lead-lined containers, the ones your buyers are willing to pay millions for." "I said shut up!" Cortez drew his pistol, but his hand shook slightly. The tactical team leader stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to command. "Boss, we need to make a decision. Local police scanners show federal tactical units moving into position, at least 3 different agencies. They're following handler protocol," Elena explained helpfully. "Multiple agencies, synchronized approach, the same technique I witnessed in Juarez." She smiled at Cortez. "Remember how that ended? Half the organization tried to surrender hoping for deals. The other half, she let the implication hang in the air." Miguel moved closer to Elena, his voice low. "What happened in Juarez?" Cortez started to speak, but Elena's voice cut through his command. "International weapons trafficking, military-grade components being sold to foreign buyers. Sound familiar?" She watched Miguel's face as realization dawned. Just like now. Same buyers, same protocols, even the same radiation warnings on the crates. The tactical team leader cursed softly. "Those aren't just weapons parts in those containers, are they? We're moving nuclear components." The mine erupted in angry shouts as more cartel members overheard. Regular soldiers had signed up for guns and drugs, not nuclear weapons trafficking. Elena watched the chaos spread with professional satisfaction, the same way she'd once watched target zones collapse during operations. "You're enjoying this," Cortez accused, his face pale with rage. "Immensely." Elena shifted in her chair, making her guards tense. "Watch your men, Cortez. See how they're dividing. Military-trained personnel by the exits, regular members clustering together. They're choosing sides, just like Juarez." An explosion rocked the perimeter as federal forces detonated their first breach charge. Not penetrating yet, just demonstrating their position. Classic handler protocol, psychological pressure before physical assault. "Boss!" a communication specialist called from his station. "We're being jammed, all frequencies going dark." "Tell me, Cortez." Elena's voice carried through the growing chaos. "Did your buyers mention what happens to failed operators? Because I remember files full of accidents and disappearances." More explosions outside. Jack's voice boomed through. "Professional-grade speakers. Attention all personnel. We have satellite confirmation of nuclear materials on site. This is now a federal containment operation. Surrender immediately, or we will use lethal force." The effect was immediate. Regular cartel members began throwing down weapons. The professional tactical teams established a defensive perimeter. but Elena could see the uncertainty in their movements. "Nuclear weapons components?" Miguel whispered, horrified. "We've been moving nuclear weapons components?" "Not your fault," Elena told him quietly. "They pick ex-military carefully. Men who follow orders don't ask questions until it's too late." Cortez's phone buzzed. His face went ash white as he read the message. "No, they can't. They promised. Let me guess," Elena said pleasantly. "Your buyers just officially disavowed all connection to this operation. Standard protocol when a shipment is compromised. Right now they're erasing records, eliminating links. Soon they'll start eliminating witnesses." The tactical team leader grabbed Cortez's arm. "Is she right? Are they going to burn us?" "Nobody's burning anybody." Cortez shoved him away. "We stick to protocol. Destroy the evidence, eliminate witnesses, break contact." His eyes fixed on Elena. "Including her." "Including a federal witness?" Elena's smile widened. "Actually, my immunity paperwork was filed this morning. Jack's orders, full federal protection." She met Cortez's eyes. "Want to add killing a protected witness to nuclear trafficking charges." Another explosion, closer now. Through the windows, Elena could see federal tactical teams moving into position. The mine had become a trap, just as she'd planned. "Options, boss?" The tactical team leader's voice carried military precision, but also fear. "We're running out of time." Elena watched Cortez wrestle with his diminishing choices. Outside, more. Cartel members were surrendering. The professional teams were separating into smaller groups, some clearly planning to fight, while others prepared to run. 10 years, she said softly. 10 years since Juarez. 10 years I waited for this operation to resurface, for the real players to show themselves, and you led me right to them. Cortez's phone buzzed again. This time, reading the message made him stumble backward, true terror crossing his face. "They're here," he whispered. Elena's smile widened. "The buyers? Good. I was hoping they'd come personally." She shifted again, making the chair creak. "After all, a handler can't score a perfect mission without all the targets in place." Through the evening air came the sound of approaching vehicles, not the familiar rumble of cartel trucks, but the quiet precision of professional operators. Elena counted 3 black SUVs with diplomatic plates approaching the mine's rear entrance. Now the real game was about to begin. The mine's ventilation system carried another high-frequency signal, one that would be meaningless to human ears, but carried clear commands to 3 Belgian Malinois positioned throughout the compound. Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom had been waiting patiently, their advanced training allowing them to maintain perfect stillness for hours. Each dog wore specialized tactical gear that made them virtually invisible in the mine's shadows. Their enhanced sensory capabilities had been monitoring every movement, every conversation, building a complete tactical picture of the operation. The moment was approaching. Elena felt it in the growing tension, in the way the professional operators moved with increasing nervousness. They recognized the signs of an operation about to collapse. Soon, very soon, she would give her dogs the final signal and the loss. Diablos Cartel would learn why her K9 unit had never failed to complete a mission. 3 black SUVs approached the Copper Canyon mine's rear entrance, their diplomatic plates catching the security lights. Elena Ramirez counted 12 men emerging, their movements revealing them as private military contractors based on their precise formations. Their leader wore an expensive suit that didn't quite hide his tactical vest. Alexander Drake. Elena recognized him from her Juarez investigation files. They'd never met face to face. "He's the one," Elena said softly, recognizing the weapons buyer from her past research. "Still hiding behind diplomatic immunity, I see." Cortez spun to face her. "You know him?" "Of course. He was the one who ordered the Juarez operation shut down, called in favors, had my investigation buried." Drake entered with the confident stride of someone used to owning every room. His security team spread out efficiently, assuming control of key positions from cartel members. "Mr. Cortez," Drake's cultured voice carried clear authority, "you assured me this facility was secure." "It is," Cortez started, but Drake cut him off. "Really?" His eyes swept the mine's interior, then explained the federal tactical teams outside. "Explain how your secure frequencies were compromised." His gaze found Elena. "Explain why you're holding a CIA handler in your office." "Former handler," Cortez corrected automatically. "No," Drake moved closer, studying Elena with professional interest. "This is the handler from Juarez, the one who almost exposed our operation 3 years ago." A thin smile crossed his face. "I wondered if you'd surface again." "Couldn't resist," Elena replied calmly. "Same sloppy protocols, same radioactive signature on the shipments. You never learn, Alexander." Miguel, the young Marine prospect, shifted nervously. "Radioactive. Boss, you said this was just weapons." "Shut up!" Stone's control was cracking. Everyone just shut up and maintain position. But Elena could see the warehouse dynamic shifting. Drake's security team was isolating the nuclear components, while cartel members began backing away, realizing the true scale of what they'd been involved in. "Your men weren't informed." Drake raised an eyebrow at Cortez. "Sloppy operational security, just like Juarez." He turned to his security chief. "Prepare for cleanup protocol Alpha." Elena recognized the code phrase from her old investigation files. "Still eliminating loose ends, Alexander, like those 3 soldiers who disappeared after Juarez." The effect on the tactical teams was immediate. They recognized a cleanup order when they heard one. Several moved toward the exits while others raised weapons, creating a 3-way standoff between Drake's men, the cartel, and the professional contractors. Another explosion rocked the perimeter. Jack's voice boomed again. "This is your final warning. We have tactical teams in position. Surrender now or we breach with lethal force. Your operation is compromised." "Your operation is compromised," Drake told Cortez coldly. "Your men are unreliable. Time for professionals to handle this like hell." The tactical team leader stepped forward. "We're not going down for this, not getting cleaned up like those guys in Juarez." Elena watched the tension rise, counting angles and distances in the growing chaos. No one noticed her working at her restraints. The zip ties Stone's men had used were professional grade, but they'd missed the ceramic blade hidden in her belt. Amateur mistake. "The handler isn't the only one who kept files," she announced casually. "Jack has copies of everything. Juarez, the diplomatic cover, the nuclear components. One phone call and it all goes public." Drake's composed facade cracked slightly. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Elena smiled. "Check your security channels. Notice anything missing? Like the routing codes for your shipments, the ones being uploaded to federal servers right now?" Cortez grabbed Drake's arm. "You promised us protection, said we'd have immunity." Drake's security chief moved with professional efficiency. The suppressed shot dropped Cortez before he could finish speaking. The mine erupted in gunfire as the 3 factions turned on each other. Elena used the chaos to make her move. The ceramic blade sliced through her restraints as Miguel, the young prospect, dove for cover behind her chair. "Choose now, Miguel," she said calmly, even as bullets whizzed past. "Help me secure those nuclear components. You get immunity." "Try to run," she shrugged. "Well, you've seen how Drake handles loose ends." Outside, federal tactical teams began their breach. The mine had become a war zone of competing interests. Drake's professionals trying to secure the shipment, cartel members fighting for survival, and tactical contractors looking for escape routes. But they'd all forgotten the most important thing about hunting. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one you think you have trapped. Elena moved through the chaos like a shadow, Miguel covering her flank. The nuclear components were her priority, keeping them out of Drake's hands while federal teams breached. Just like Juarez, she thought. But this time I have what I need, proof of the international conspiracy, proof of Drake's involvement, and witnesses ready to talk. Drake's careful plans were falling apart, his cleanup protocols useless against a handler who'd spent 3 years preparing for exactly this moment. Elena Ramirez hadn't just been hiding on her farm. She'd been waiting, planning, keeping her skills sharp for the day when the Juarez operation would resurface. Now, as gunfire echoed through the mine's tunnels and federal teams breached the perimeter, the handler was about to demonstrate why she'd been considered the most effective K9 operator in border operations history. Because sometimes justice comes not from the fastest shot, but from the most precise. And Elena Ramirez's dogs hadn't failed to secure a target in 8 years. Through her specialized collar, she sent the high-frequency signal that her K9 unit had been waiting for. Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom emerged from their hidden positions, like avenging spirits, their tactical gear making them nearly invisible in the chaos. The dogs moved with lethal precision, using their enhanced training to isolate and neutralize key targets. Drake's security team, professional as they were, had never faced anything like this. K9 units specifically trained for close-quarters tactical operations, capable of coordinating complex maneuvers without visible commands. Impossible, Drake whispered as he watched his carefully planned operation dissolve into chaos. His security team, caught between federal breach teams and precisely coordinated K9 attacks, began to lose cohesion. The dogs weren't just attacking, they were systematically cutting off escape routes, forcing targets into predetermined containment zones. Elena moved through the firefight with calculated precision, using the chaos as cover while Miguel provided support. "The nuclear components are stored in Bay 3, she told him during a brief pause in the shooting, protected by Drake's security teams. "Remember your Marine training. What's the counter for their 3-man wedge formation?" Miguel blinked, then understood. As Drake's men advanced, he and Elena split up, using crossing lines of fire to break their coordinated approach. The dogs complemented their movement perfectly, Shadow taking high ground, while Ghost and Phantom flanked the security team's position. "Nice work," Elena acknowledged as they moved forward through the mine. Through the speakers, Jack announced the federal breach was beginning, multiple explosion points creating chaos and confusion. Drake's commanding voice cut through the gunfire. "Secure those containers. Nothing else matters." "He's desperate," Elena observed, leading Miguel through a service tunnel. "Nuclear components are just his cover story. There's something else in those containers, something worth killing for." They reached a catwalk overlooking Storage Bay 3. Below, Drake's men were preparing to move the specialized containers while remnants of the cartel engaged in a running gun battle with the tactical contractors. Elena's phone vibrated. A text from Jack. "Satellite confirms unique thermal signature from containers, not matching nuclear profile." "Miguel," she said quietly, "what color was the radiation warning symbol on those containers?" "Red and black, standard nuclear warning." He stopped, realization hitting. "Wait, nuclear warnings are magenta and yellow." "Exactly," Elena smiled grimly. "Drake's been playing everyone. Even his own buyers think they're getting weapons-grade nuclear materials, but he's shipping something else. Something worth creating an elaborate cover story." A new explosion rocked the mine as federal tactical teams made their first entry. Drake's security forces responded with professional precision while the remaining cartel members scattered. "Boss!" one of Drake's operators called out. "Federal breach teams on 3 sides. We're running out of time. Get those containers loaded," Drake ordered. "Use Protocol 7 if you have to." Elena's expression hardened. "Protocol 7, just like Juarez." "What's Protocol 7?" Miguel asked, ducking as bullets sparked off the catwalk railing. "Thermite charges," Elena said quietly. "Destroy everything rather than let it be captured." That's how they buried the evidence last time. Burned it all, including their own men. Below, Drake's operators began planting charges while continuing to hold off federal teams. The mine had become a complex battlefield. Federal agents breaching from multiple points, cartel members fighting for survival, tactical contractors looking for escape routes, and Drake's professionals trying to protect their cargo. "Time to end this," Elena said softly. "Miguel, I need you to create a distraction. Get their attention focused upward while I..." Movement caught her eye. One of Drake's men was opening a container, preparing to plant charges. For just a moment, Elena saw inside, not nuclear components, something else that made her curse softly. "Those containers," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "They're full of hard drives, servers, data storage." Understanding dawned on Miguel's face. "Information? They're moving information?" "Not just any information," Elena's voice was grim. "Those are military-grade quantum encryption servers. Black box technology used to store intelligence operations data, covert assets, black site locations, active operation details." She watched Drake conferring urgently with his security chief. "Someone stealing classified intelligence files." "Jesus," Miguel whispered, "using nuclear components as cover." Another explosion rocked the building as federal teams breached the east wall. Through the chaos, Elena spotted Drake heading for a secure exit, protected by his remaining operators. "Choose now," she told Miguel. "Help me stop Drake. You get full immunity. Everything you did here gets classified as a sanctioned operation." Miguel checked his weapon, then nodded. "What's the play?" "First we need to reach those servers before they trigger the thermite." "Then," Elena smiled, the expression sending chills down Miguel's spine. "Then we show Drake why they called me the Handler." Below, Drake's men had finished placing charges. Soon, they would destroy evidence of one of the largest intelligence thefts in history. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd given the Handler exactly what she needed. Proof of an international conspiracy. Proof of Drake's true operation. And a chance to finish what started in Juarez. Elena moved to the catwalk's edge, her voice carrying that quiet authority that had once commanded covert operations across 3 continents. "Now, Miguel, show me what Marine training taught you about hunting predators." Through her specialized collar, she sent another series of high-frequency commands. Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom emerged from different points in the mine, their tactical gear making them nearly invisible in the chaos. The dogs moved with lethal precision, using their enhanced training to systematically isolate key targets. Drake's security team, professional as they were, had never faced anything like this. K9 units specifically trained for close-quarters combat, capable of coordinating complex maneuvers without visible commands. "Impossible," Drake whispered as he watched his carefully planned operation dissolve into chaos. His security team, caught between federal breach teams and precisely coordinated K9 attacks, began to lose cohesion. The dogs weren't just attacking. They were systematically cutting off escape routes, forcing targets into predetermined containment zones. Elena and Miguel moved through the firefight with calculated precision, using the chaos as cover. Each dog's tactical pattern complemented their movement perfectly, creating a synchronized dance of handlers and K9s that had once made them legendary in covert operations. "Sir!" one of Drake's operators called out desperately. "The dogs! They're not just attacking, they're hunting." Elena's voice cut through the chaos. "Just like they did in Juarez. Just like they've been trained to do." She emerged from the smoke, Miguel covering her position, while the dogs maintained their containment formation. Drake's composed facade finally cracked completely. "You have no idea what you've done. The organizations behind this, they don't..." Forgive failure, they don't leave loose ends. Like the loose ends in Juarez. Elena's voice carried deadly precision. The operators who disappeared, the evidence that conveniently burned. She moved closer, letting him see the handler's focus in her eyes. That's the difference between us, Alexander. You hide in shadows, eliminate witnesses, bury evidence. I watch. I take the perfect shot. The server room had become a federal crime scene, technical teams swarming the encrypted drives while tactical units secured the remaining prisoners. Elena watched them work, her mind already processing the implications of what they'd uncovered. Server data is intact, Jack reported through the radio. We're finding connections to operations worldwide. This goes deeper than we thought. Elena kept her weapon trained on Drake while federal agents secured him. You built your entire operation on the assumption that no one would look too closely at nuclear shipment protocols. That the radiation warnings would keep people from asking questions. She smiled. But you forgot something crucial. What's that? Drake asked bitterly. Handlers become handlers by studying every detail, analyzing every angle, understanding every aspect of their target. Elena's voice carried the quiet confidence that had once made her legendary in covert operations. You spent 3 years thinking you were safe. Really, you were just giving me time to line up the perfect shot. The mine echoed, with the sounds of federal teams completing their sweep, but Elena maintained her professional focus. The immediate threat was contained, but she knew from experience that operations like this had deep roots. Drake wasn't the end, he was just the first target in what would become a much larger investigation. Miguel approached, his expression showing new respect. The technicians found something else. These servers, they're connected to other facilities, similar operations. Of course they are, Elena replied calmly. Juarez wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern. She watched Drake's expression, reading his reaction like she'd once read target zones. And now we have proof. Every connection, every operation, every compromised official, all of it preserved on these servers. The handler's hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. Elena Ramirez was about to demonstrate why she'd been called the most effective K9 handler in border operations history. Because sometimes the perfect shot isn't just about hitting the target. It's about starting a chain reaction that brings down an entire operation. Through the chaos of the secured mine, Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom maintained their tactical positions, their enhanced training allowing them to process and respond to threats even in the complex environment. Each dog's specialized gear contained sophisticated monitoring equipment, feeding real-time tactical data to federal teams. Clear the remaining charges, Elena ordered, as technical teams moved through the facility. Drake's people planted thermite throughout the complex, standard cleanup protocol. Destroy everything rather than risk exposure. She turned to Miguel. Your Marines training is about to come in handy. We need to secure every piece of evidence before someone decides to bury this operation like they did in Juarez. The young ex-Marine nodded, already coordinating with federal explosive experts. He moved with new purpose, understanding that he wasn't just a cartel soldier anymore. He was part of something bigger, something that mattered. Elena watched the operation unfold, her tactical mind processing every detail. The dogs maintained their containment patterns, their presence alone, keeping Drake's remaining operators from any thoughts of resistance. This was why her unit had been legendary, not just for their combat effectiveness, but for their ability to control complex situations through presence and precision. Handler, Drake spoke softly, his composure cracking further as he watched his operation systematically dismantled. You still don't understand. This isn't just about stolen intelligence. The people behind this, they have reach you can't imagine. I don't need to imagine, Elena replied calmly, checking feeds from the dog's tactical gear. I spent 3 years mapping their reach, understanding their network, preparing for exactly this moment. She smiled coldly. You're not just going to prison, Alexander. You're going to help us expose every connection, every compromised official, every operation you've ever touched. Through the command network, she could hear Jack coordinating with federal teams worldwide. The evidence they'd secured wasn't just about one operation. It was the key to unraveling an entire shadow network of intelligence theft and international corruption. Elena touched her specialized collar, sending a series of commands to her K9 unit. Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom responded with perfect precision, adjusting their tactical positions to support the ongoing evidence collection. This was why they'd been unbeatable in the field. Handler and dogs working as one unit, each movement coordinated, each action precise. The Copper Canyon operation was ending, but its implications were just beginning to ripple through intelligence. Communities worldwide. Elena Ramirez had done more than stop one shipment. She'd exposed a network that would take years to fully unravel. And if anyone tried to bury this evidence, if anyone moved to protect the corrupt officials exposed by Drake's servers, well, there was always a handler watching, always K9 units ready to hunt, always justice waiting to be served. The real work was just beginning, and Elena Ramirez was ready. Sometimes the perfect operation isn't just about completing the mission. It's about starting something bigger, something that changes everything it touches. A week after the Copper Canyon mine operation, Elena Ramirez stood in a secure federal briefing room, watching satellite feeds of coordinated raids across 3 continents. Drake's exposure had triggered the largest international intelligence operation in recent history. On screens before, her specialized teams moved on hidden facilities, secured compromised assets, and arrested corrupt officials. Final numbers coming in, Jack reported, reviewing data on his tactical tablet. 37 facilities exposed worldwide, over 2,000 compromised agents identified, dozens of eliminated operators now confirmed as victims of cleanup protocols. He looked up at Elena. The ripples keep spreading. Elena studied the feeds with the same focused intensity she'd once brought to covert operations. Every exposed facility leads to more connections. Each arrested operative reveals new networks. Drake spent decades building his shadow empire. Dismantling it won't happen overnight. Miguel entered with new intelligence reports, his Marines' training evident in his precise movements. After the mine operation, he'd accepted a position coordinating between agencies, helping process the mountain of exposed evidence. Ma'am, we're seeing patterns in their recruitment. They specifically targeted disillusioned Special Forces operators, compromised intelligence officers, anyone with skills and reasons to turn against their own agencies. Of course they did, Elena replied, watching another of Drake's facilities, being secured on the screens. They built their power by turning professionals against each other, creating divisions, fostering distrust, eliminating anyone who might expose their manipulation. Her voice carried the same steady calm that had once made her legendary in covert operations, but they forgot something crucial about professionals. "What's that?" Jack asked. True professionals understand loyalty, not to individuals or organizations, but to principles, to justice, to truth. Elena moved closer to the screens, analyzing the tactical feeds with handler-level focus. Through the briefing room windows, they could see more specialized teams arriving at the federal complex. Intelligence agencies worldwide had formed joint task forces, sharing resources and information in unprecedented ways. Drake's exposure had done more than reveal corruption. It had created new bonds of trust between organizations that had once viewed each other with suspicion. Director Drake is talking, Miguel reported, checking his tablet, providing details about operations going back 2 decades. Chen and Roth are negotiating deals too, each trying to avoid extradition to countries with harsher justice systems. Elena nodded, unsurprised. They built their power on betrayal. Now they're betraying each other, hoping to save themselves. She turned to another screen showing Cortez being led into federal custody. How many other operations have contacted us? 7 so far, Jack confirmed. Similar setups, different covers. They saw what happened to Drake's network and decided to come in from the cold. Your reputation carries weight, Elena. They're calling you the ghost handler in intelligence circles now, the one who never loses her target. The real credit belongs to the network, Elena corrected. Every agent who refused to stay silent, every operator who chose justice over profit, every professional who remembered their true loyalties. She studied the global operation feeds. With quiet satisfaction, Drake thought he could control the shadows forever. He never understood that shadows eventually produce hunters. Miguel's tablet chimed with new updates. Ma'am, we're getting reports from multiple agencies. Sleeper agents coming forward voluntarily, offering evidence. They're saying the same thing. They saw what happened at Copper Canyon and realized which side they needed to choose. Drake's greatest weakness was his certainty, Elena explained, watching more facilities being secured across the screens. He was so convinced of his power, his control over global intelligence, that he never considered the possibility of organized resistance. He thought eliminating individual threats was enough. But you showed them different, Jack observed. You proved that professionals working together, staying loyal to real principles, are stronger than any shadow organization. Elena's smile carried echoes of her operational days. In handler work, I learned that the perfect operation isn't just about skill or timing. It's about understanding your target completely, knowing exactly where to aim to create the maximum effect. She gestured to the screen showing worldwide operations. Drake wasn't just exposed, he was exposed in a way that forced every intelligence service to cooperate, to rebuild trust, to remember their true purpose. Through the tactical feeds, they watched another Drake facility being secured. More corrupt officials facing justice, more compromised operations being revealed. The Shadow Empire was being dismantled piece by piece, replaced by something stronger. A network of professionals united by principles rather than profit. What happens next? Miguel asked, watching the feeds. We keep working, Elena replied with quiet certainty. Drake was powerful, but he wasn't unique. There will always be people trying to corrupt intelligence services, to manipulate professionals, to hide criminal enterprises in shadows. Her voice carried the same focused determination that had once made her unbeatable in covert operations. But now they'll know that shadows can hide hunters as well as prey, that true professionals never forget their principles, that some targets are worth waiting years to acquire. The handler's legacy would be more than just exposing one corrupt organization. She had created something lasting. A network of dedicated professionals who understood that real power comes not from manipulation and fear, but from unwavering commitment to justice and truth. The autumn sun painted the valley gold as Elena Ramirez stood on her farmhouse porch, watching the Arizona sunset. Valencia Grove had returned to its quiet routine, though changes were visible to those who knew where to look. The cartel vehicles no longer patrolled the mining trails. The corrupt officials had been replaced, and somewhere in the distance, specialized teams continued dismantling what remained of Drake's operations. More reports from the International Task Force, Maria said, joining her mother with coffee. They still received regular updates about the ongoing operation. They're still finding Drake's connections, still exposing corrupt officials. They will for years, Elena replied, accepting the cup. Drake's shadow empire had reached everywhere, built influence in every agency, every service, every level of power. Dismantling it completely would take time, but that was something Elena Ramirez understood well. Handlers weren't made overnight. Her phone buzzed, another update from Miguel. The young ex-Marine had excelled in his new role, coordinating between agencies as they processed the mountain of exposed evidence. 4 more Drake facilities secured, she read. Another dozen sleeper agents identified. 2 more hidden accounts. Frozen. Elena smiled slightly. The dominoes were still falling, each revelation leading to more discoveries. Through the evening air came the sound of approaching vehicles. Not the threatening rumble of cartel trucks this time, but the quiet efficiency of federal transports. Jack emerged from the lead vehicle, followed by other familiar faces from the task force. Each carried tablets, folders, documents requiring the handler's expertise. "Sorry to interrupt your retirement again," Jack said as they reached the porch. "But we need your insight on some new evidence." Elena nodded toward the farmhouse. They moved inside, spreading materials across the kitchen table that had once hosted family meals. Now it served as an impromptu command center for coordinating international justice operations. Exposed in 12 more countries, Jack reported, displaying data. Each revelation leading to more corrupt officials, more compromised agents, more hidden facilities. Like pulling threads, Elena observed, studying the evidence. Each connection revealing more of the tapestry they wove. Through the windows, they could see more vehicles arriving, representatives from various agencies, each bringing their own pieces of the expanding investigation. The farm had become more than just a home. It was a symbol now, a place where justice was coordinated, where truth was pursued, where shadows were burned away by light. "Drake's leadership is talking," Miguel added through the conference call setup, each trying to make deals, offer evidence, save themselves from justice. "Let them talk." Elena's smile was cold but satisfied. "Let them expose every operation, every conspiracy, every crime they committed. Let them tear down everything they built trying to save themselves." Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom maintained their patrol patterns around the property, their enhanced training allowing them to secure the growing command center while appearing to casual observers as nothing more than well-trained farm dogs. The work continues, Elena thought quietly, watching the stars emerge over the valley. There will always be shadows to burn away, always be truth needing light, always be justice requiring service. The farm had returned to its peaceful routine, but it had also become something else. A place where hunters gathered to coordinate, where evidence was analyzed, where truth was pursued. Elena Ramirez had built her quiet life here, hiding the handler she'd been. Now she'd built something else, a legacy of justice, a network of truth seekers, a force for burning away shadows. The handler's hunt was complete, but its impact would continue, echoing through intelligence services worldwide as decades of corruption faced the light of justice. And if new shadows tried to rise, if corruption attempted to rebuild, if darkness threatened to return, well, there was always a handler watching, always K9 units ready to hunt, always justice waiting to be served. Elena smiled as the Arizona night deepened. She had found her balance between the quiet farmer and the legendary handler, between personal peace and duty's call, between retiring from the hunt and helping others pursue justice. Drake's shadow empire had fallen, but the work of maintaining light, of preserving truth, of serving justice, that work would continue through the hunters she'd trained, the network she'd built, the legacy she'd created. In the end, that was the handler's greatest victory, not just exposing one conspiracy, but creating a force that would continue burning away shadows wherever they tried to hide. Elena Ramirez returned to her farm life, but her impact lived on. In every exposed corruption, every served justice, every truth brought to light. The handler had completed her hunt, but her legend would endure, reminding those who'd hide in shadows that justice eventually finds its way into light. that truth eventually burns away all darkness, that some shadows hide hunters, not just prey. The Copper Canyon mine had become a focal point of intense intelligence activity, as Elena Ramirez observed from her position in the command center. Through secured feeds, she watched teams process evidence from dozens of hidden facilities, while her K9 unit maintained their defensive perimeter around the complex. "Sir," Miguel rushed into the room, tablet in hand. "We've found something in Drake's personal files. Looks like documentation of every operation they've run in the past decade." His marine training showed in the precise way he presented the data. "There's a pattern here. They weren't just stealing intelligence, they were building something bigger." Elena studied the displays with the same focused intensity that had once made her legendary in covert operations. The evidence painted a disturbing picture, not just of corruption, but of a systematic attempt to reshape global intelligence networks from the inside out. "Look at these recruitment protocols," she pointed to a section of data. "They weren't just targeting disillusioned operators, they were creating them, manufacturing circumstances that would turn loyal agents against their agencies." Her voice carried the quiet authority that had commanded countless operations. Jack leaned in, examining the pattern she'd identified. They compromised internal affairs investigations, manipulated performance reviews, engineered mission failures, anything to create operators who felt betrayed by the system, and then offered them a way to strike back, Elena finished. "Classic predator behavior: wound your target, then present yourself as salvation." Through the command center windows, they could see more specialized teams arriving. The operation had grown beyond simple evidence collection. It had become a full-scale effort to protect the very integrity of international intelligence services. "How deep does this go?" Miguel asked, his expression showing the weight of what they'd discovered. "All the way," Elena replied calmly. Drake's organization wasn't just stealing secrets. They were trying to rebuild the entire intelligence community in their own image, create a shadow network loyal only to them. Her phone buzzed with another update from the field teams. More facilities being discovered, more agents coming forward, more evidence of how far the corruption had spread. But something wasn't right. The pattern was too perfect, too complete. "They're giving us too much," Elena said suddenly, her handler's instincts firing. "Drake, his leadership, they're confessing to everything too easily." She moved to the main display, analyzing the data flow with renewed focus. "This isn't just a cleanup operation, it's misdirection." Shadow's ears perked up, catching something beyond human perception. The dog's enhanced training allowed him to detect threats at frequencies normal security systems missed. Ghost and Phantom shifted their patrol patterns in response, their movements signaling potential danger. "Elena's right," Jack said, reviewing the intelligence feeds. "They're burning their old network to protect something else, something bigger." He pulled up a new set of data points. "Look at these financial transfers, massive amounts of money moving just before we hit Copper Canyon." "They knew we were coming." "Not just knew," Elena corrected, watching her dog's reaction patterns. "They planned for it. Everything we've found, every facility we've exposed, it's all old infrastructure. They're letting us dismantle their previous operation while their real network goes dark." Miguel's tablet chimed with urgent updates. "Ma'am, we're detecting massive data purges across multiple systems, not just in known Drake facilities. These are active intelligence networks." "They're not running," Elena's voice carried deadly certainty. "They're evolving, using our own success against us." Through the tactical feeds, they watched Drake's old empire crumble. But Elena recognized the pattern. She'd seen it before in Juarez, when they thought they'd exposed the whole operation only to discover they'd barely scratched the surface. While we focus on documenting past crimes, they're embedding their new, Network deeper into the system, she explained, sending fresh commands to her K9 unit. The dogs moved with precise coordination, expanding their security perimeter, using the chaos of these exposures to position their real assets. Jack cursed softly, seeing the implications. Every agency is focused on cleaning house, reviewing past operations, finding compromised agents, the perfect cover for inserting new operatives. Exactly, Elena confirmed. Drake's confession, the exposed facilities, the financial trails, it's all theater, designed to keep us looking backward while they move forward. Shadow suddenly went rigid, his enhanced senses detecting something in the electronic spectrum. Elena immediately recognized the signal pattern. She'd encountered it in Juarez just before the operation went dark. "They're activating something," she announced, moving to the main console. "Miguel, check the deep packet analysis on those data purges. Jack, get me satellite coverage of every known Drake facility." Her commands carried the same quiet authority that had once made her unit unbeatable in the field. The screens filled with data as the full scope of Drake's real operation became clear. The exposed network was just the surface. Beneath it lay something far more sophisticated. A new kind of shadow empire, built not on stolen secrets, but on controlling the very systems meant to detect such theft. "Look at this," Miguel pointed to a pattern in the data flow. "They're not just erasing files, they're inserting new protocols, changing how intelligence agencies communicate, how they verify information, how they classify threats." "Building backdoors into the entire system," Elena nodded. "While we celebrate exposing their old network, they're creating something much harder to detect." Through the command center windows, the Arizona sunset painted the sky in shades of red and gold. But Elena's focus remained on the tactical displays, her mind processing the complex patterns of deception and manipulation they'd uncovered. "So, what's our play?" Jack asked, watching her analyze the data. Elena smiled slightly, the same expression that had once made cartel leaders surrender rather than face her unit in the field. "They think they're the only ones who can evolve. Time to show them what a real handler can do." She moved to the main tactical display, her dogs taking position around her with perfect precision. "They're using our success to hide their adaptation. Fine, we'll use their adaptation to expose their true network." Her fingers flew across the console, implementing new search algorithms. "Miguel, start cross-referencing every promoted agent, every new security protocol, every system upgrade implemented since we hit Copper Canyon. Jack, get me direct feeds from our trusted operators, not the official channels, the back channels we established during the initial investigation." The screens filled with fresh data as her commands were executed. Elena watched the patterns emerge with professional satisfaction. Drake thought he was clever, using the exposure of his old network to embed something more insidious. But he'd forgotten the first rule of handler operations. Sometimes the best way to catch your target is to let them think they're winning. "There," she pointed to a series of correlations forming across multiple agencies. "See the pattern? Every exposed facility corresponds to a new security upgrade. Every arrested agent links to a promoted supervisor. They're not just hiding their new network, they're installing it in plain sight, using our own cleanup protocols as cover." Miguel studied the pattern with growing understanding. They're counting on everyone being too focused on documenting past corruption to notice the new vulnerabilities being created. "Exactly," Elena confirmed, "which means we have exactly what we need, proof of their entire adaptation strategy, evidence of how they're trying to evolve." Through the tactical feeds, they could see Drake in his detention cell, his composed facade still in place despite his apparent cooperation. He thought he was controlling the situation, using his confession to protect his organization's evolution. He was about to learn why Elena Ramirez had never failed to complete a mission. Implementation plan? Jack asked, recognizing the focused intensity in her expression. "We let them think their strategy is working," Elena replied, sending new commands. To her K9 unit, the dogs moved with deadly precision, adjusting their tactical positions to support the new operation. Let them continue embedding their new network, thinking we're too busy processing their old one to notice. Then, when they've fully committed to the adaptation, we expose the entire evolution at once, Miguel finished, his Marines training helping him grasp the tactical approach. Not just expose it, Elena corrected. We use it. Every backdoor they create becomes our entrance. Every protocol they compromise becomes our evidence. Every system they try to control becomes a trap. Her smile carried the same quiet confidence that had once made her unit legendary in covert operations. They think they're building something we can't detect. They're actually giving us exactly what we need to dismantle their entire organization, past, present, and future. The screens continued filling with data as her plan took shape. Drake had tried to use the exposure of his old empire to protect his new one. Instead, he'd given the handler exactly what she needed to destroy both. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Valencia Grove as Elena Ramirez stood on her porch, Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom maintaining their vigilant patrol. The farm had returned to its peaceful routine, but it held new purpose now. A command center for hunting those who would hide corruption in shadows. Her phone buzzed with updates from around the world. Drake's evolved network was being systematically exposed and dismantled. His attempt to use the old empire's fall as cover for something new had become his final mistake. The handler had turned his own evolution against him, using every backdoor, every compromised system, every planted agent as evidence. "More arrests coming in," Maria reported, joining her mother with fresh coffee. "Intelligence agencies worldwide are implementing the new security protocols, the real ones this time." Elena smiled, watching the sun set over the valley. The Shadow Empire hadn't just been exposed, it had been replaced by something stronger, a network of professionals united by principles, dedicated to keeping the light of truth burning. Through the evening air came the sound of approaching vehicles, not threats this time, but allies bringing new missions, new evidence, new shadows that needed light. The handler's work would never truly end, but that was as it should be. Justice wasn't a destination, but a constant journey. Elena touched her specialized collar, sending a silent command to her K9 unit. Shadow, Ghost, and Phantom adjusted their patrol pattern, their movements invisible to untrained eyes, but carrying volumes of meaning to those who understood what elite units could achieve. Sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the one that strikes fastest or hits hardest. Sometimes it's the one that watches, waits, and turns its target's own plans into a trap. Drake had learned that lesson too late. His shadow empire had fallen, and in its place stood something far more powerful, a force for justice that would never stop hunting those who tried to hide corruption in darkness. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of justice and the importance of bringing truth to light, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Tomorrow, we'll bring you another tale of courage, dedication, and the relentless pursuit of what's right. Remember, sometimes the most powerful weapon against darkness isn't force, but patience, precision, and the unwavering commitment to justice. Drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from, and never forget that even in the darkest shadows, there are always handlers watching, always K9 units ready to hunt, always justice waiting to be served.